Welcome to another edition of Good Questions. These videos are the answers to questions that I seem to get a lot in coaching sessions or through emails or other conversations with people. And the question we're going to talk about today is how to place a value on a business. If you're planning to buy a business, maybe you're going to sell a business, there's a little bit of art and science to placing a value on the business, and it's ultimately up to the buyer to be able to decide how much they're willing to pay for it. Some people will pay an incredible amount of money for something, so it's just like buying a used car. It's worth as much as somebody is willing to pay for it. But there is a starting point that you can use, and there's a little bit of variables and things that you need to be aware of and some pitfalls. So we're going to talk about those right now. So the first thing that I want to mention is this is kind of a rule of thumb that I have personally, and that is to never make the first offer. Ultimately, if you are buying a business, you would like the seller of that business to come up with a price first and throw it out to you and say, okay, now you can evaluate whether that price is a valid price or not. But if you were to come right out of the chute and say, okay, I'll give you this much money for it, then the seller says, okay, I'll take it. Well, now you're going to be questioning yourself to say, geez, could I have got it for less? Do they know something that I don't know? So maybe you leaped too fast. So always wait for them to make an offer, and then you can evaluate and make a counter offer. So the first assumption that we're going to make is that this business is profitable. If a business has made a profit in the last 3, 4, 5 years, that's great. That's where we want to be if we're buying a business. If the business has not been profitable for the last 3, 4, 5 years, then it's probably not worth buying as a business unless it has some other assets or a big customer base or something that you know for a fact that you can improve on and make it profitable. So if a business is not profitable, then we're going to be looking at maybe just an asset sale instead of actually buying the business entity. And we'll talk about an asset sale in just a little bit. So here's the starting point for the valuation of a business. And it's going to be a multiple of the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, EBITDA. Basically, it means the profit of the business before taxes and everything is paid. You're going to take a multiple of that, and it's typically like 3 to 5 times is what that multiple is. And this is to say that you want to be able to pay back all of the money that you've paid for the business. You want to pay yourself back in 3 to 5 years. So that multiple, though, that 3 to 5, is just a rule of thumb, and different businesses have different multiples. So if a business is very stable and very profitable with not too much downside, then the multiple goes up. If the business is a little bit riskier and cyclical or seasonal, then it might be a little more risky, so the multiple goes down. So you're not willing to pay as much for those businesses. And so here are a couple examples. So a blog, if you have a monetized blog like I do with smallishbusiness.com and a lot of other websites where people have advertisements and affiliate sales and that kind of stuff, if you want to be able to sell that website or blog, it's typically only worth 2 to 3 times the annual earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. So, and that's because Google could change the algorithm. We could have something like COVID happen right now, and all of a sudden advertisers are not spending money. So all of a sudden the income can drop. So it's something that's a little bit risky. So the multiple is very small. But a brewery is about 15 times multiple. So if you wanted to buy a microbrewery or a distillery or something, then that multiple is quite high. And it's high because it's a very profitable product. A farm is 13.8. Real estate businesses, like a real estate brokerage, is 17 times multiple. Again, because it's a very profitable business. It's a very stable and busy business. It does have some cyclical elasticity, but that's made up for on the profit side. So ultimately, this multiple is going to be up to you to decide, but there is a starting point. And I'll put a link in the description, and there will also be a link in the blog post at smallishbusiness.com where you can see a full list of all the different multiples for different industries. So that starting point, that multiple of 2 to 3 times earnings, is then you have to add to that the assets of the business, the depreciated value of the assets of the business. So we're not going to want you to buy all of the assets for exactly what the book value is or even exactly what the person paid for them. You want to buy them for the discounted value of whatever they would go for on the market right now, which is typically 50 cents on the dollar maybe at the best. So you're going to look at all of the book of assets that they have and depreciate it down to say, okay, this is actually market value only worth this much money. So you're going to depreciate that down. And then you're also going to take away from that earnings multiple and assets, you're going to subtract the liabilities. Liabilities is also any warranties or any hidden dangers of the business. So by warranties, I'm talking about maybe if you wanted to buy a home builder's business, which I think is about a 9 times multiple, remember that the home builder might have a warranty that extends out 10 years on the homes that they've built. And so as the buyer of the business, are you going to honor those warranties for the next 10 years? And those warranties are a liability that's hanging out there, so you want to be able to subtract that from the selling price because it might be some money out of your pocket to be able to cover those warranty expenses. There could also be a liability in some of the dangers. If a business has been in a going concern for a long time, then there might be some skeletons in the closet. They may have engaged in some pollution or some illegal activities or something that could come back and bite you as the new business owner later. And you want to know about that now if you can. But if you can't and you suspect that there might be some skeletons in the closet, then you're going to want to discount that back from the selling price that you're willing to pay, so that you don't have to incur any of those expenses coming out of your pocket. So one of the things that you need to ask yourself is, can I improve the business? If that multiple is pretty low and the business is maybe not incredibly profitable, you need to look and say, okay, is there something that I can do to make this business more profitable that makes it an attractive purchase for me? And that's where the systems come into place. And that is something that can add to the value. So when we talk about this multiple, if the seller of the business has been doing the right thing all the time by working on their business, not just in their business, they have systems and procedures and everything in place so that you can step right in and start running the business and making a profit from day one. Like most entrepreneurs, though, the seller might have just been lazy and been working in their business as like one of the technicians, just doing the tasks of the business, and doesn't have all those documented procedures in place. And if that's the case, then you as the new buyer, the new owner of the business, are going to have to step in and start making up all of that stuff on your own. You're going to have to figure out all of those systems. You're going to have to figure out all of the policies and the procedures and document them all. And if you have to go that route, you need to ask yourself, geez, if I'm starting from scratch anyway, maybe I should just start from scratch anyway and just start a business and not buy this existing business. And, that gives you some leverage for negotiating the price down to be able to come back to that seller and say, hey, all of your knowledge of running this business is stuck in your head and it's not in my head, and I don't have it all documented. I'm going to have to figure it all out anyway. So that gives you some leverage to either drive the price down or to put off the sale a little bit. And maybe that seller is going to say, yeah, you're right. Let me document some things and get some procedures and everything down so that we can, kind of come to a better agreement. And that puts you, the buyer, in a better position to be able to make the business more affordable and run well and profitable and everything. The seller of the business doesn't want to set you up for failure. They want to set you up for success, especially if they happen to be financing a little bit of the business themselves, of the sale. Now, there's also something to think about when you are talking about this earnings multiple that I just happened to think of, and that is that you are relying on the numbers that the seller is giving you. And, hopefully they have followed generally accepted accounting practices and everything is all good in the books. But if it's not, then you have to consider the fact that that could be one of those dangers or hidden liabilities, that maybe things are not exactly as they put them. So that can drive that multiple down a little bit too. You know, a typical example in a very small business would be a business owner who has been putting cash in their pocket and having unreported income for a long time. But then when they face the prospect of selling their business, they start reporting all of the income. So on paper, it looks like the income is going way up. But in actuality, it could be flat or actually declining. It's just that now they're actually reporting income that they weren't before. So there are some real pitfalls that you have to be careful of. So look at the earnings multiple. Subtract away the liabilities. Remember that liabilities are not just debt, but they are some of the other dangers and the warranties. Can you improve the business? Does it have systems in place? There's a lot of variables there. I'll put a link to the blog post at smallishbusiness.com where you can send me questions about business valuation or anything else, and maybe I'll feature your question on one of these good questions videos. Be sure to like this video and subscribe if it helped you out answering some questions, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks.